So in Lutheran traditions, preaching is always reflecting on the gospel, the good news of God's love in Jesus Christ. When we read Scripture, we find both law, which Paul talked about really clearly in what he had to say, the law that accuses us, that reminds us of the ways that we don't measure up, that reminds us that God is God and we are not, that reminds us of the ways that we fall down and the ways that we are broken. So we find law, and then we find gospel. How many of you Sunday schoolers have heard the word gospel before? A few of you have. The third graders talked about it. So if you're third and fourth graders, you probably have. Gospel means good news. And as followers of Jesus, as God's people, we believe that the Bible is full of good news. The good news of God's love that comes to us even when we aren't able to do what we ought to do, even when we're not able to get up to be by God. God comes to us first in love in Jesus Christ. And that is always, always good news. So a pastor's job is to listen to the Bible, and really all of our jobs when we hear Scripture, when we do Bible study, is to listen to the stories of God's people. And we'll hear some law. We'll hear some ways that God says, boy, you're really not measuring up. And then we will listen for good news, for God's love that comes to us in Jesus Christ. And that is what Martin Luther got so excited about. Where the Lutheran tradition comes from is this passion to make sure that we hear the good news no matter what. And so Paul wrote in Romans, as you guys read for us, they are now justified by grace as a gift. That means that God's love comes to us for free. We didn't have to apply for it. We didn't have to check off a couple of boxes and fill out the form. We didn't have to do all the right things. God came in Jesus Christ while we were still a mess. And God comes to make us new every day. How many of you get everything right every day? Yeah, no, I'm raising my hand, but I shouldn't, because I don't see any of the grown-ups raising their hands. None of us do. None of us do. We all need that good news of God's love. And so that's what should happen in a sermon. And if you are listening to a sermon, if you're a confirmation kid, if you're an adult, if you're a second grader, you should be listening for good news, because that's our job. And we may not always do it great. And if you ever say, hey, Pastor, I did not get any good news, that'll get us to sit up straight and think hard about what we're preaching, because that's the most important thing.